I was halfway through a bag of peppermint bark and a nervous breakdown when Grandma Eloise's letter arrived, handwritten, sealed in wax, and smelling faintly like lavender and guilt. Most people get text messages or emails. My grandmother? She sends parchment like she's plotting a royal coup. Lila, it began, in her looping cursive. This Christmas, everyone comes home. No excuses. We have unfinished business. Unfinished business. Which, if you're a Montrose, usually means tears, lies, and someone threatening to never speak to this family again, before showing up next year with fudge and amnesia. I stared at the letter over my half-dead poinsettia, thinking, I could just ignore it. Pretend it got lost in the mail. Pretend I was kidnapped by elves. Pretend literally anything else. Then my phone buzzed. Hey, Lila, my boss chirped. We're downsizing before the holidays. You understand. Downsizing. Just like that, I was laid off 2 weeks before Christmas. I laughed, because crying was too obvious. So there I was, jobless, sugar-buzzed, staring at a wax-sealed summons to the Montrose mansion, which I swore I'd never set foot in again after the incident of 21. You know the one. Where Aunt Marge threw a ham at Aunt Vivian. Where Nolan made his big announcement that turned out to be about a cryptocurrency scam. Where Grandma Eloise called it the most memorable Christmas since the divorce. And yet, apparently, I was going back. Because life loves irony, and my car, the only thing I could depend on, decided to die the next morning in front of my apartment building. That's when Ezra appeared. Ezra Hale, my neighbor from 2 doors down. Mechanic, part-time musician, and full-time observer of my chaotic existence. He leaned against my car like he'd been waiting for a cue from the universe. Let me guess, he said, smirking. You forgot to feed it emotional support and it died of neglect. Funny, I muttered. It's just a dead battery. He raised an eyebrow. And where exactly were you planning to go in this heap of festive depression? I hesitated. Home. Ezra blinked. Oh. You have one of those. Yeah, I sighed. The kind that turns Christmas into a therapy session with casserole. He grinned. Sounds festive. By the time he finished replacing the battery, I'd somehow agreed to let him tag along for the drive. He claimed he was heading north anyway, but I'm 90% sure he just didn't trust me to survive 6 hours alone with my thoughts and caffeine. We left early the next morning, my tiny hatchback stuffed with too many coats, a broken GPS, and the creeping dread of familial obligation. The snow had already started when Ezra said, "So what's the deal with your family? You sound like you're driving toward a haunted house." Haunted by bad decisions, I said. And possibly Aunt Vivian's perfume cloud. He laughed. Can't be that bad. Oh, it's worse. My grandma's the kind of woman who hosts brunches where she accidentally reveals your secrets. My brother Nolan's the golden child who measures success in Instagram followers. My aunts are in a lifelong feud about who makes better pie crust. And my uncle runs a podcast about how Santa's part of a CIA experiment. Ezra grinned. You're exaggerating. I wasn't. By hour 3, my phone buzzed again. Group text. Family announcement, everyone's confirmed for Christmas Eve. Bring gifts, smiles, and emotional stability. Joking. Kind of. Grandma-y. Followed by. Aunt Vivian, Lila, darling. Bring sequins. The living room acoustics are perfect for a performance. Aunt Marge, Vivian, no one wants your off-key screeching. Lila, bring running shoes. We'll need to escape. Uncle Ray, just warning you all, I'm bringing evidence that Santa's real and possibly alien. Stay woke. Ezra glanced over. You weren't kidding. Nope. And now you're part of it. Congratulations. By the time we hit the Montrose driveway, the sky was bruised with snow clouds. The mansion stood like it always did, tall, proud, and utterly insane. Twinkling lights draped over every inch. Inflatable reindeer guarded the lawn like deranged sentinels. But what stopped me cold was the massive banner hanging over the front door in glittery red letters. Welcome home, family traders. Charming, Ezra said. Is that festive irony? That's Aunt Marge, I said. Subtlety isn't her cardio. The front door burst open before I could even ring the bell. Aunt Vivian swept out in a cloud of faux fur and perfume that smelled like regret and champagne. Lila, darling, she cried, air-kissing the space near my cheeks. You look so thin. Tragic, but chic. Hi, Aunt Vivian. And who's this tall drink of Christmas spirit? She eyed Ezra like he was dessert. My neighbor. Mechanic. Savior of my battery. Delicious. She winked. We'll meet him later when the lights go out. They always do. Before I could respond, Aunt Marge appeared, holding a casserole dish like a weapon. Vivi. Stop scaring the guests. And Lila. You actually came. I owe Ray $20. Aunt Marge was wearing a sweatshirt that said Jingle Bells, my elbows don't. Glad to know I'm a financial surprise, I said. You always are, she replied cheerfully. Now grab a plate. Grandma's making her famous apology stew. Nobody knows who it's for this year. Inside, the chaos was instant. Vivian's cats darted underfoot, Aunt Marge shouted about carbs, and somewhere in the background, Uncle Ray's voice carried from the living room. And that's when NASA covered up the truth about reindeer flight patterns. Meanwhile, my brother Nolan, perfect hair, perfect smirk, perfectly insufferable, emerged from the kitchen with Cass, his wife, trailing behind. Lila, he said, grinning too wide. You made it. Brave of you. Unemployed, I corrected. Not brave. He chuckled. Same thing, really. Cass gave me a tight smile, the kind you'd give before saying something mean in private. We've missed you, she lied. Of course, I said. You needed a scapegoat. Ezra coughed to hide a laugh. Dinner that night was classic Montrose. Which means every topic was a landmine. Grandma Eloise sat at the head of the table, regal as always, wearing her pearls like armor. I'm so glad everyone's here, she began sweetly. We have so much to discuss this Christmas. Everyone froze. Aunt Marge whispered, she's got that tone again. Vivian crossed herself dramatically. Oh Lord, not another inheritance debate. Uncle Ray muttered, she's finally going to admit the aliens. Grandma just smiled, that cryptic smile that promised disaster wrapped in ribbon. I tried to focus on my mashed potatoes, but my curiosity was louder than the argument starting over cranberry sauce. So later, when everyone was distracted by Vivian's Christmas cabaret rehearsal, I slipped into Grandma's study. It hadn't changed, same mahogany shelves, same smell of peppermint and nostalgia. And on the desk, like fate had gift-wrapped it for me, sat a small sealed envelope. The label read, Montrose property, do not open until Christmas. I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked, thick with folded papers. Behind me, the floorboard creaked. I turned. Cass stood in the doorway, eyes wide, face pale. Don't touch that, she whispered. Why not? Her hands shook. Because if you do, this family won't survive Christmas. And then she was gone, heels clicking, leaving the faint scent of expensive perfume and panic behind. I stood there, staring at the envelope, the laughter and chaos from the other room muffled through the walls. For the first time since I'd arrived, I wasn't annoyed or cynical. I was curious. Because whatever was inside that envelope, it wasn't about holiday cheer. It was about secrets. And I had a feeling Christmas at the Montrose house was about to turn into one hell of a show. If you've ever wondered what it's like to wake up in a house full of people who both love and low-key resent each other, imagine Christmas morning inside a reality show where everyone forgot they signed up. That was the Montrose mansion by sunrise. I'd barely slept. Every floorboard creaked like it was tattling, every heater hissed like it had opinions. I kept thinking about the envelope in Grandma's study. Montrose property, do not open until Christmas. What was that supposed to mean? But before I could sneak downstairs for answers, Aunt Marge's voice thundered through the hall. Wake up. It's family time. Family time. My least favorite time zone. I dragged myself to the kitchen, where chaos was already brewing. Vivian was performing a one-woman opera to Jingle Bell Rock while wearing sequined reindeer antlers. Marge was making protein pancakes and yelling at everyone to hydrate responsibly. Uncle Ray had his podcast mic set up next to the toaster, and that's how reindeer are government drones disguised as innocent holiday mascots. He noticed me and waved. Morning, niece. Care to weigh in on Santa surveillance? I'm pleading the fifth, I said, reaching for coffee. Then Nolan walked in, crisp white shirt, perfect hair, carrying himself like the world owed him applause. Cass followed, clutching her phone like it was a life raft. Morning, everyone. Nolan said too brightly. How about some gratitude before caffeine? Marge squinted. Gratitude for what? For family, he said, spreading his arms like a motivational speaker. For the gift of being together again. Vivian sniffed. The only gift I want is a restraining order. Cass forced a smile. Let's try to keep things joyful this year. Ezra wandered in a minute later, hair tousled, still half asleep, wearing one of my brother's borrowed sweaters. I don't know how he managed to look more relaxed than anyone else in the room. Morning, circus troupe, he said. Vivian purred, oh, if only all mechanics looked like you. Marge muttered, don't encourage him. I sipped my coffee, watching the spectacle. Welcome to the Montrose family breakfast. We serve tension with a side of guilt. After breakfast, Grandma Eloise made her grand entrance, silk robe, pearls, and a cane she didn't actually need but wielded like a royal scepter. "Good morning, my loves," she said, surveying us like she was taking attendance in a courtroom. "Isn't it wonderful to have everyone home again?" No one dared disagree. She smiled. "Tonight we'll have a family dinner to celebrate. I expect everyone at the table, and that includes you, Ray, even if you're mid-conspiracy." Ray grumbled, "Truth doesn't take holidays off." Eloise ignored him. "And tomorrow, I have a special announcement." My stomach tightened. The envelope in her study flashed in my mind. Vivian gasped theatrically. "Are we finally getting inheritance news?" "Vivian," Grandma said sweetly, "you're getting older, not psychic." "Patience." Marge snorted so hard her coffee almost sprayed. By noon, tensions were already simmering. Vivian decided to host a pre-dinner rehearsal for her Christmas cabaret, forcing everyone into the living room. Nolan was trying to manage a work call. Cass was frantically rearranging place settings for harmony. I found Ezra by the fireplace, tinkering with a loose light bulb. "How are you holding up?" I asked. He smirked. "I fixed 4 electrical issues, survived 2 sing-alongs, and witnessed a man accuse Rudolph of espionage. So, thriving." I laughed, the kind of laugh you don't expect to escape. "You fit in weirdly well. Maybe I'm chaos-proof." "Don't jinx it." Cass's voice interrupted us. "Lila, can I talk to you privately?" I followed her into the hallway, curiosity prickling. She turned to me, eyes nervous. "I need to ask a favor." "Oh. If Grandma asks you about that envelope in her study, don't mention it." I blinked. "Why?" "She's planning something delicate. I don't want you getting dragged into it." "Dragged into what?" Cass's lips trembled like she wanted to tell me, then she just shook her head. "Please. Trust me." I raised an eyebrow. "You've known me 3 Christmases and have lied through at least 2 of them. Why would I start now?" She flinched. For a second, the mask cracked. "Because this time, it's not about me." Then she walked away, heels clicking like punctuation. Later that afternoon, I found refuge in Grandma's greenhouse, my old childhood hideout. The air smelled of pine and soil and memories. Ezra found me there, holding 2 mugs of cocoa like peace offerings. "Found this in the kitchen," he said. "Assumed you needed sugar and warmth." "You assume correctly." He sat beside me on the bench. "So, your brother's, interesting." That's one word for him. He seems obsessed with perception. He was raised to be. Grandma wanted a politician, got a narcissist with a LinkedIn addiction. Ezra chuckled. "And you?" I was the creative disappointment. Too emotional, too weird, too unwilling to marry a dentist. "You'd make a terrible dentist." "Thank you." We sat quietly for a while, the snow outside thickening like powdered sugar. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. Then, through the glass, I saw Aunt Marge and Vivian screaming at each other over who got to use the driveway. Marge had a shovel, Vivian had a feather boa. It looked like a low-budget duel. Ezra watched. "Should we intervene?" I sipped my cocoa. "Nope. This is foreplay for them." Dinner that night was worse than breakfast. Grandma insisted on seating everyone by emotional compatibility, which, judging by the result, she based on a random shuffle. I ended up between Vivian and Uncle Ray. Across from me sat Cass, looking like she might cry, and Nolan, looking like he might combust. Vivian leaned over, whispering loud enough for everyone to hear, "You know, darling, family tension releases toxins. That's why I still look so youthful." Ray scoffed. "Youthful? You're one facelift away from a barcode." "Excuse me, tinfoil tyrant." "Excuse me, Vegas reject." Grandma tapped her spoon on her glass. "Enough. It's Christmas Eve, not a demolition derby." Then, to everyone's surprise, Cass stood. "Maybe we should go around and say what we're thankful for?" Marge muttered, "I'm thankful this wine's 13% alcohol." But Cass persisted. "Come on. It'll help us reconnect." "Fine," Vivian said dramatically. "I'm thankful for sequins, Botox, and not being Marge." "Charming," Marge said. "I'm thankful for discipline, boundaries, and noise-canceling headphones." Ray went next. "I'm thankful for open minds. Even though this table is clearly full of sheeple." Grandma nodded graciously. "I'm thankful for family, no matter how ungrateful they are." Then everyone looked at me. "I'm thankful," I said slowly, "that I only have to do this once a year." Ezra clinked my glass. "Cheers to survival." After dinner, Grandma called me into her study again. I braced myself for a lecture. She gestured to the fireplace, where the envelope still Saturday. You saw that, didn't you? I swallowed. Maybe. Her eyes softened, but her tone stayed sharp. It's not time yet. But when it is, you'll understand why I brought you back. That scared me more than anything. Before I could respond, Cass appeared at the door, pale as paper. She looked at Grandma, then me, then back again. We need to talk, she said quietly. But Grandma just waved her off. Tomorrow, Cassandra. Everything will come out tomorrow. Cass's voice trembled. You said that last year. Last year, Grandma said, I wasn't ready. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I wandered downstairs for water, the house eerily quiet for once. Snow pressed against the windows, heavy and silent. As I passed the study, I saw a shadow move inside. I pushed the door open slightly. Cass was there, kneeling by Grandma's desk, the envelope in her shaking hands. Cass? I whispered. She froze, eyes wide. Lila, please. Don't. What are you doing? Her eyes glistened. Trying to fix something before it explodes. Then she stuffed the envelope back in the drawer, shut it hard, and bolted past me. I stood there, staring after her, feeling that familiar mantra's dread tighten in my chest. Whatever was in that envelope, whatever unfinished business Grandma wanted to settle, was about to make this the Christmas that even therapy couldn't fix. If curiosity killed the cat, then my family must have buried an entire litter under Grandma's living room rug. The morning after the chaos of arriving home, I woke to the smell of burnt cinnamon and regret. Aunt Patty Cakes had decided to make festive breakfast muffins again, which, in her language, meant anything edible drowned in wine and optimism. Rise and shine, my little therapy project, she chirped as I shuffled into the kitchen wearing my dad's old hoodie and a scowl. You look tired. Emotional detox would do wonders for you. I bit back a groan. So would earplugs. The kitchen looked like a bomb had gone off, flour in the air, eggshells on the floor, Ruby's cat, don't ask why the cat was here, pawing at what looked like a muffin corpse. Grandma June sat at the table reading the obituaries, her morning ritual. Morning, I said. Without looking up, she replied, still alive. You? That's the thing about Grandma. Every word from her is dipped in sarcasm and iced with love. But my mind wasn't on breakfast. It was on the letter. The one I found yesterday tucked inside her old cookie tin, the one labeled, For Christmas Only. It wasn't long, just a few faded lines written in my grandfather's uneven handwriting. But it hinted at something that made my stomach drop. If the truth ever comes out, tell them it wasn't meant for everyone. Cryptic? Absolutely. Suspicious? Even more so. And knowing my family, it probably involved money, scandal, or both. I snuck into the living room, letter in hand, while Patty Cakes preached about the healing power of grapes, fermented or otherwise. The house was buzzing, cousins fighting over Wi-Fi, Ruby rehearsing lines for her Christmas Eve performance, which no one had asked for, and Uncle Gil taping another conspiracy diagram to the fridge. According to Gil, the government used Christmas lights to spy on suburban families. I didn't even ask. I just wanted peace. And maybe answers. I sat by the old piano and reread the letter, trying to piece together what my grandfather meant. He'd died over a decade ago, and everyone spoke about him like he was Santa Claus and Winston Churchill rolled into one. But maybe he wasn't so spotless after all. The letter mentioned a date, December 24th, 1999. And one word that stood out like a blinking light, inheritance. Before I could dig further, a voice broke my concentration. Are you snooping again? I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was my brother, sorry, the family's golden retriever in human form, wearing his perfect sweater and his perfect smirk. I'm not snooping, I said, hiding the letter behind me. I'm cleaning. He arched a brow. You haven't cleaned since 2015. Growth is possible. He leaned closer, trying to peek behind me, when Grandma's voice echoed from the kitchen like a war trumpet. Stop flirting and come get your breakfast before it starts crawling away. We both groaned. Breakfast at Grandma's wasn't optional. By noon, the entire family had gathered in the living room for what Aunt Patty called pre-Christmas bonding. She brought out a tray of wine and announced, we're doing a family exercise. God help us. She passed everyone slips of paper. We're writing down one truth and one lie about ourselves, and everyone has to guess which is which. Emotional transparency builds trust. Ruby gasped. Oh, darling, Ruby lives for trust exercises. Grandma muttered, Ruby also lives for attention, but here we are. The game started harmlessly enough, until it was my turn. I took a sip of wine, liquid courage, then read my paper aloud. 1. I once got arrested for trespassing. 2. I once found a family secret I probably shouldn't have. The room went silent. Every eye turned toward me. Uncle Gil froze mid-sip. Which one's the lie? I smiled sweetly. Guess. Patty laughed awkwardly, trying to keep things light. Oh, she's teasing everyone. You know how creative our little Lila gets. But Grandma's gaze was sharp, her fingers gripping her mug. She knew. After that, the air in the room changed, heavy, watchful. The laughter faded, replaced by a low current of suspicion. The game stumbled on, but the fun had been replaced by something else, curiosity. And I'd just given this family of gossip addicts the ultimate bait. Later that evening, I escaped to the porch to get some air. The snow was falling soft and steady, coating the world in temporary peace. I was scrolling through my phone when a message popped up from Max, my neighbor back home, the mechanic with the sarcastic grin. Max, how's the circus? Me, currently playing the role of the family disappointment. Sold out show. Max, need rescue? Me, only if you own a snowplow and a time machine. He sent back a laughing emoji, then a second message. You mentioned a letter yesterday. You still thinking about it? I stared at the screen. He remembered. And truthfully? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I typed back, yeah. It feels big. Like something they tried to bury. He replied, then dig. When I went back inside, I caught Harper, my brother's too-perfect wife, whispering on the phone in the pantry. Her voice was low, tense. No, I told you already. They can't find out. Not until after Christmas. Please. Just trust me. The moment she saw me, she froze, then plastered on a fake smile that would have made Barbie proud. Oh. Lila. I was just, ordering last-minute gifts. In the pantry? I asked. For who, the canned beans? She laughed nervously. You're so funny. Then she slipped past me, perfume and panic trailing behind. I waited until she was gone, then glanced at the phone she'd left behind on the counter. One missed call. The contact name read, unknown. I didn't touch it. But something in my gut twisted. Whatever she was hiding, it wasn't about Christmas gifts. By nightfall, the family had gathered around the fire, Ruby performing a dramatic monologue from A Christmas Carol, Patty trying to harmonize with herself, and Uncle Gil explaining to the twins how mistletoe was an ancient alien symbol. It would have been funny, if I weren't spiraling. Between the letter, Grandma's sharp silence, and Harper's phone call, I felt like I was living inside a snow globe, perfectly calm on the outside, pure chaos inside. As I sipped my mulled wine, Grandma finally spoke from her recliner. Lila, stop thinking so loud. I blinked. I'm not. She gave me a knowing look. Whatever you found, let it rest. Christmas isn't the time for truth. I set my glass down. Then when is? She looked at the fire for a long moment. The flames reflected in her eyes, old, tired, maybe even guilty. When the house is ready to burn, she said quietly. Then she turned back to the TV like she hadn't just dropped a sentence that would haunt me for days. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The letter. The phone call. The look on Grandma's face. And somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m., I decided I was done waiting. If the house was going to burn, I might as well light the first match. If you've ever wondered what emotional warfare looks like wrapped in fairy lights, come to my grandmother's house the day before Christmas. By sunrise, the living room looked like the aftermath of a Hallmark explosion. Tinsel everywhere. Garland strangling the curtain rods. Aunt Ruby was directing the chaos like she was hosting the Oscars, waving a glitter-covered clipboard. Lila, sweetheart, can you hang the snowflakes symmetrically? They represent the fragile beauty of family. They represent the fragile beauty of my sanity, I muttered, standing on a chair with a stapler that refused to work. Across the room, Uncle Gil was muttering to himself about how the blinking Christmas lights were clearly Morse code from extraterrestrials. He'd set up a whiteboard diagram titled Santa, the Surveillance Operative. Meanwhile, Aunt Patty Cakes floated in wearing a robe that looked like a sequined bath mat, holding her morning wine and declaring, "It's the season of miracles. Who wants a spiritual detox before dinner prep?" I raised my hand. I do. The kind where I leave the house for 12 hours. She ignored me. Grandma June sat in her armchair, wrapped in her favorite blanket, watching the circus unfold. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't even pretending. Just observing. Like she knew what was coming. And something was coming. I could feel it. The air was too thick, the smiles too forced. The kind of tension that makes even the Christmas cookies taste suspicious. By mid-morning, my brother and his perfect wife had joined the chaos. I could hear their voices from the kitchen, too calm, too polite. "I told you, it's not the time," my brother said. Harper whispered something back. I couldn't catch it all, but I caught enough. "If she finds out, it's over." She glanced up when she noticed me hovering by the doorframe, her face snapping into that glossy, fake-perfect smile. "Lila." "Morning. You look well-rested." "Really?" I asked. "Because I was up half the night plotting my escape." She laughed too hard. "You're so funny." My brother gave me a look, that silent sibling warning to drop it. I didn't. I just smiled back, pretending to grab coffee while memorizing every detail. They were hiding something. And after last night, I wasn't in the mood for secrets. By noon, the storm outside had started. Heavy snow. Thick, endless. The kind that makes you realize you're stuck, physically and emotionally. Ruby, sensing the drama, clapped her hands. "Family photo time. Everyone, line up. I want tears of joy, not trauma." Patty Cakes cried immediately. "Oh, I love this family." I blinked. "You said that last year right before you told Grandma her gravy tasted like regret." Ruby ignored me. She set her phone on a tripod, positioned us like we were actors in her personal sitcom. Grandma in the center, smiling faintly. Gil flashing a peace sign. Harper squeezing into frame like her life depended on it. "Okay." Ruby shouted. "Say repressed emotions." And that's when the Christmas tree fell. I wish I could say it was an accident, but honestly, nothing in this house happens without divine comedy. The cat jumped on a branch, the lights tangled, and the whole glittering masterpiece tipped over in slow motion, smashing straight into the coffee table. Ornaments everywhere. A puff of glitter like a smoke bomb. Patty screamed. Ruby screamed louder. Grandma didn't flinch. Finally, she muttered. "A metaphor." The chaos didn't stop there. Dinner prep was worse. Patty insisted on cleansing the turkey's energy with sage. Gil accused her of releasing government nanobots. Ruby recited a Christmas monologue that involved fake tears and real smoke when she leaned too close to the candles. At some point, I escaped to the hallway, and that's when I heard Grandma and my brother whispering in the den. Her voice was low, sharp. "You can't hide this forever. She'll find out." His reply was almost pleading. "Not now, Grandma. Please. She's been through enough." "Enough?" she snapped. "You think lying is protection? You're worse than your father." My stomach dropped. Because I knew they were talking about me. I pressed closer to the door, heart pounding. But before I could hear more, the kitchen timer exploded into a shrill alarm and Ruby screamed, "The potatoes have ascended." By the time I looked back, Grandma and my brother were gone. The storm outside was roaring by afternoon. The power flickered twice, then dimmed to a low hum. The house glowed in candlelight, soft and tense. Everyone had retreated to corners, nursing wine, licking emotional wounds. I sat by the window with my phone, texting Max. I'm trapped in a live-action therapy session. Max, send coordinates. I'll bring snacks and rescue ropes. You'd need a snowplow. Max, for you, I'd build one. For a moment, I smiled. The first real one in days. Then I noticed Grandma staring at me from across the room. Her expression unreadable. She called me over. When I sat, she handed me an envelope, thick, yellowed, tied with string. "You're not the only one who's been looking for answers," she said quietly. I blinked. "Is this about the letter?" Her eyes softened. "It's about the truth. But don't open it yet. Wait until tomorrow night. The storm will pass, and so will the pretending." "Grandma, what's in it?" She sighed, looking toward the window. Snow swirling outside. Something your brother was too cowardly to admit. Before I could press, the lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, chaos. Patty shrieked, "The universe is cleansing us." While Ruby lit a candle dramatically and announced, "We shall not let darkness win." Somewhere in the background, Gil yelled, "I told you the government was cutting the grid." And in the middle of it all, my brother yelled, "Everyone calm down." Which, as always, had the opposite effect. In the chaos, Harper dropped a glass of red wine, it shattered, splattering the floor like a crime scene. And when the lights flickered back on, I saw something chilling, Grandma's envelope, lying open on the rug, the string broken. Someone had opened it. I lunged for it, but it was empty. Whoever did it was faster. The room was full of confused chatter, no one admitting anything. And yet, when my eyes met Harper's, she looked away, too fast. That night, I couldn't sit still. The envelope. The letter. The whispers. The lies. The storm outside raged harder, the wind howling like it was mocking me. I wandered the hallway, thinking, trying to connect dots. Then, from Grandma's room, I heard her voice, low and trembling. You shouldn't have done that. Not before dinner. And then another voice, sharp and scared. I didn't mean to. I just needed to know. It was Harper. Grandma sighed. Curiosity isn't your sin, dear. It's fear. You're afraid of what she'll do when she finds out. Harper whispered something I couldn't hear. Then silence. I backed away before they noticed me. My pulse was pounding. Downstairs, the fire crackled faintly. Ruby had passed out on the couch, face mask smeared, half-eaten cookie in hand. Patty was still humming to herself beside a half-empty bottle. And me? I sat there, staring into the flames, realizing one thing. Whatever was in that envelope wasn't just a secret. It was the spark. And tomorrow. Christmas Eve. This entire house was going to burn. By morning, the world outside had disappeared. The storm had buried the driveway, the trees, and half of Uncle Gil's conspiracy equipment under a suffocating blanket of white. The house looked like a snow globe, one you'd shake just to watch everyone panic inside. No one was going anywhere. Patty Cakes tried to open the front door and was nearly decapitated by an avalanche of snow. Well, she said cheerfully, guess the universe wants us to bond. Or it wants witnesses, I muttered. The power flickered again, and Ruby gasped dramatically. If we lose electricity, how will I perform my monologue? Grandma didn't even look up from her knitting. Silently. That set the tone for the day, an unholy mix of caffeine, claustrophobia, and suppressed childhood trauma. By 10 a.m., the house smelled like cinnamon, tension, and a hint of smoke from Gil's attempt to make breakfast science-y. The man had decided to cook eggs using a heat gun. Patty Cakes was meditating in the living room, chanting, I am the calm in the chaos, while Ruby argued with her cat about emotional support boundaries. And me? I was in the pantry, staring at the empty envelope from last night. Still no letter. Still no answers. Whoever had taken the note did it fast, and quietly. I was so deep in thought that I didn't notice Grandma standing behind me until she spoke. Don't go digging when the ground's still frozen. I turned, startled. You said I could open it. She sighed. I said you could, not the rest of them. Someone's trying to play historian before the truth's ready to be told. Then what's the truth, Grandma? Her eyes softened, full of something like pity. You'll find out tonight. Everyone will. Before I could respond, she patted my cheek and shuffled away, humming a Christmas hymn like she hadn't just promised emotional detonation over dinner. The hours crawled. By noon, we were all trapped in what could only be described as festive purgatory. Ruby decided to direct a Christmas Eve confession circle, because apparently we hadn't suffered enough. She stood in the living room wearing a sparkly shawl and declared, let's clear our emotional closets before dinner. Honesty heals. Grandma snorted. Honesty kills, more like. Come on, June, Ruby pressed. It's Christmas Eve. Grandma sighed, setting down her teacup. Fine. I confess I hate your monologues. Ruby gasped. How dare you? Also, Grandma continued, you owe me for the vase you broke in '07. The room froze. Then Patty, bless her heart, clapped. I love this energy. The confession started small. Ivy admitted she'd regifted last year's presents. Gil confessed to borrowing money from Grandma's emergency fund for research purposes. Then it was Harper's turn. She hesitated, her hands twisting in her lap. I have something to say. Her voice trembled. Everyone leaned in. I haven't been completely honest with all of you. The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. My brother frowned. About what? Harper looked at him, then at Grandma. About the inheritance. Every muscle in my body locked. The room went dead quiet. Even Ruby's cat froze mid-lick. What inheritance? I asked, slowly. Grandma's knitting needle stopped. My brother's jaw clenched. Harper took a shaky breath. Your grandfather left a second will. I found out about it last year, by accident. It names only one beneficiary. Who? I asked. Her eyes darted to Grandma, then to me. You. It was like the air itself snapped. What? My voice came out hoarse. Harper rushed on, words tumbling over each other. I didn't mean to hide it. I just thought, it would destroy everyone. The house, the land, everything, it was supposed to go to you, Lila. Grandma finally spoke, voice low but steady. She's telling the truth. My brother turned to her, eyes wide. You knew? I found the letter your father hid. He never wanted Lila to know, said she wasn't responsible enough to handle it. I laughed, bitter, short. So he rewrote me out of my own life. Ruby gasped, Patty cried, and Gil muttered, I knew capitalism was a scam. It was chaos. Everyone shouting, accusing, deflecting. Why didn't you tell me? I yelled. Why keep it secret for years? Grandma's eyes glistened. Because truth without timing is just cruelty. Then the oven alarm went off. And because the universe has impeccable comedic timing, smoke started billowing from the kitchen. The turkey, screamed patty cakes. We all rushed in to find the bird half-charred, the oven smoking like a campfire, and Ruby fanning the flames with her shawl. Gil grabbed the fire extinguisher. Step back, citizens. He sprayed the entire kitchen in white foam. Patty started crying. My turkey had potential. Your turkey had a death wish, I muttered, coughing through laughter and tears. The power flickered again, lights dimming, shadows dancing. The snow outside howled against the windows like it wanted in on the drama. And in that smoky, chaotic moment, Grandma stood in the doorway, calm, regal, unbothered. She raised her glass. Merry Christmas Eve, everyone. The truth's finally out. Now pass me a fork. Dinner that night was a fever dream. We sat around a half-destroyed table, candles dripping wax onto Grandma's lace runner. Ruby insisted on making a toast, voice wobbling with theatrical emotion. To family, she began, the greatest blessing and the worst curse. No one disagreed. We ate in awkward silence for a few minutes before my brother finally spoke. So what happens now? Grandma sipped her wine. Now? We talk. We forgive. We stop pretending. Harper's eyes were glassy. I'm sorry, Lila. Truly. I didn't mean to keep it from you. I just didn't know how to tell you without breaking everything. I looked at her, then at my brother, his face pale, jaw tight. Looks like you broke it anyway. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Grandma dropped another bomb. And that's not the only secret left in this house. Forks froze midair. Grandma, I said slowly, what do you mean? She looked around the table, eyes glittering in the candlelight. Your father wasn't the one who hid the second will. It was your mother. The room erupted again. Ruby gasped so loudly the cat jumped off the counter. Patty started praying into her wine glass. Gil began sketching a new conspiracy diagram on a napkin. I just sat there, stunned, furious, exhausted. Grandma sighed, pushing her plate away. Tomorrow morning, we'll settle it once and for all. Until then, eat. Drink. Argue quietly. Then she got up and left the room. No one followed. I ended up on the porch again later, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the snow that still refused to stop. The sky glowed faintly from the storm's reflection, eerie and beautiful. My phone buzzed. Max again. Max, you alive? Me, define alive. Max, want me to come shovel you out tomorrow? Me, you might need a tank. Max, then I'll borrow one. I smiled despite everything. Then I saw my reflection in the glass door, tired, messy, but lighter. Maybe the truth had hurt. Maybe it still would. But for the first time in years, I wasn't running. Inside, the family had gone quiet. The storm still raged. Somewhere upstairs, Grandma hummed an old Christmas tune, slow and bittersweet. And I couldn't shake her words. Tomorrow morning, we'll settle it once and for all. I didn't know what it was, but I knew one thing. Christmas Day wasn't going to be merry. It was going to be unforgettable. I woke up to the sound of yelling. Not the usual "where's the coffee?" or "who stole my charger?" kind of yelling. No. This was war cry yelling. Christmas morning had arrived, and apparently, so had the apocalypse. I threw on a sweater and trudged downstairs, half expecting to see smoke again. Instead, I found my brother and Ruby locked in a shouting match over, wait for it, wrapping paper. You can't reuse paper that's been wrinkled, Ruby, he snapped. Ruby flipped her hair like she was auditioning for a soap opera. It's called sustainability, not poverty, Ryan. Yes, his name was Ryan. Because of course, my brother had a name that sounded like someone who always wins arguments he shouldn't. Grandma was calmly sipping coffee in her armchair like none of this was happening. Children, she said, either you fight outside or you hand me that cinnamon roll. Patty Cakes, wearing a reindeer onesie, skipped into the kitchen singing All I Want for Christmas is Peace and Quiet. It didn't work. An hour later, everyone had gathered around the living room for the dreaded Christmas breakfast. There were pancakes, mimosas, tension, and, for some reason, a tax envelope sitting next to Grandma's plate. My stomach dropped. "Grandma," I said cautiously, "what's that?" She dabbed her lips with a napkin, completely unbothered. "Oh, this? The will, dear. Figured we might as well handle it before the eggs get cold." "Handle, what?" Ruby sputtered. "Now?" "Yes," Grandma said, slicing her pancake. "No point delaying the inevitable. If we're going to ruin Christmas, let's do it efficiently." We all stared at her. The air felt thick, like the moment before a storm. She opened the envelope, pulling out a stack of old, yellowing papers tied with a faded red ribbon. "Your mother left this with me years ago," she said. "She wanted me to give it to you, Lila, when I thought you were ready." I swallowed hard. "And you think I'm ready now?" Grandma smiled faintly. "No. But you're here. And that's close enough." She unfolded the papers and began reading. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied, each word sharp enough to cut through the silence. "To my daughter, Lila, if you're reading this, it means you've come home. I'm sorry I couldn't be the mother you needed me to be. I hid things. I lied about others. But everything I did was to protect you from your father's choices." My heart was pounding. I could feel everyone watching me, waiting for the next bomb. Grandma's voice wavered slightly. "The land, the house, the savings, they're yours. But there's something else. Something he never knew. You were not his only child." I blinked. "What?" The room went silent. My brother frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Grandma hesitated, then looked straight at Harper. Everyone turned to her. Harper's eyes went wide. "No. No, that can't be." "Harper," Grandma said softly. "You know it's true." "What are you talking about?" I demanded. Grandma took a deep breath. "Harper isn't your sister-in-law, Lila. She's your half-sister." It was like the world tilted. The room spun. The air vanished. "What? No, what do you mean half-sister?" I stammered. "She's your mother's daughter," Grandma said. "From before she met your father. She gave Harper up for adoption. Years later, fate brought her back, to your brother." Ruby dropped her mimosa. Patty Cakes gasped so hard she hiccuped. Gil muttered something about family trees that look like spaghetti. Harper covered her face, crying. "I didn't know when I first met him. I didn't. I only found out last year, when I saw the letter in Grandma's desk. That's why I hid it. That's why I didn't tell anyone." Ryan's face turned white. You knew?" "I was trying to protect you," she sobbed. "Both of you." The room exploded. Ryan stormed out, slamming the door so hard one of Grandma's snow globes fell off the shelf and shattered. Ruby started yelling about ancestral curses. Patty was fanning herself with a napkin, whispering, "Oh sweet baby Jesus, make it stop." I just sat there, staring at Harper, at my sister. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally whispered. Harper's voice cracked. "Because I didn't want to lose you. Any of you." I laughed, sharp and hollow. "Well, congratulations. You lost us anyway." She cried harder. Grandma put the papers down, her hands trembling. "Enough. No more hiding. No more half-truths. Are there any truths left?" I snapped. Grandma sighed, leaning back. "One more." I groaned. "Oh, for the love of candy canes." She looked me dead in the eye. "You're not the only one inheriting. There's a clause. The property goes to both daughters, if you can agree to share it." I stared at her, then at Harper. My newly discovered half-sister. "You've got to be kidding me." The rest of the day played out like a badly written Christmas movie, except no one was acting. Ryan refused to come back inside until Gil bribed him with spiked eggnog. Ruby insisted on turning the entire debacle into a healing improv session. Patty burned half the cookies trying to bake away the bad energy. And Grandma? She sat in her armchair, eating fudge like she was watching the world's most chaotic holiday special. At one point, I caught her smiling, not cruelly, but knowingly. "You planned this, didn't you?" I asked. She shrugged. "Christmas is about revelations, dear. The wise man brought gifts. I bring chaos." By evening, everyone was emotionally fried. We gathered in the living room for dinner, again. This time, no one spoke for a full 5 minutes. The fire crackled. The snowstorm finally stopped. Then Ruby raised her glass. To secrets, lies, and second chances. Patty sniffled. And to finding family where you least expect it. I looked at Harper. She looked back, eyes swollen, hopeful, terrified. I sighed. Fine. But if we're co-owning this house, I get the good bathroom. Her laugh broke the tension, small and shaky but real. Even Grandma smiled. Well, she said, miracles do happen. After dinner, everyone drifted off, some to bed, others to sulk in separate corners. I ended up outside again, staring at the quiet yard blanketed in snow. The storm had passed. For the first time in days, the world was still. Harper joined me, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. Truce? She asked softly. I took the mug. Truce, for now. She smiled. Good enough. We stood there in silence, watching the stars peek through the thinning clouds. And maybe, just maybe, Christmas didn't have to be perfect to be memorable. Inside, Grandma was humming again. This time, it sounded lighter. Somewhere between the lies, the laughter, and the leftover turkey, we'd found something real. It wasn't forgiveness yet. But it was the start of one. If I ever write a memoir, I'm calling it My Family Ruined Christmas, a survival guide. Because by the time the sun rose the next morning, the house looked like a battlefield where snowmen and emotions went to die. Empty wine glasses everywhere. Wrapping paper in the fireplace. A half-eaten fruitcake in the bathtub, courtesy of Ruby, who'd apparently decided it was symbolic performance art. The storm had finally cleared, leaving behind a landscape so still it almost felt fake, too peaceful for what had just happened inside these walls. I found Grandma in the kitchen, humming to herself while making pancakes shaped like hearts. Morning, she said, without looking up. Hungry? I blinked. You're acting like nothing happened. She flipped a pancake. Because it's over. Now we digest, emotionally and physically. I poured myself coffee and sat across from her, exhausted. So. Harper's my half-sister. Mom lied. Dad lied. You orchestrated a Christmas truth bomb. Grandma smiled faintly. Don't forget the turkey fire and the improvised therapy session. Right. A Christmas classic. She finally turned to me, her eyes soft. Are you angry? I thought about it. The betrayal. The yelling. The years of confusion that suddenly made sense. Yes, I said honestly. But mostly, tired. She nodded. Good. Anger's fuel. Exhaustion means you're ready to rebuild. A door creaked behind us. Harper shuffled in, hair messy, wearing one of Ryan's hoodies. Her eyes were swollen, but she smiled hesitantly. Morning, she whispered. I stared at her for a long moment, the woman who'd been my brother's wife, my secret sister, and my emotional earthquake all at once. Morning, I said back. She looked at Grandma. He's packing. Your brother? I asked. She nodded. He says he needs space. I don't blame him. Grandma sighed. Men need to think in empty rooms. Women think while scrubbing things. Without another word, she handed Harper a sponge. By noon, the whole family had scattered into emotional cleanup duty. Patty Cakes was burning sage in every room. Ruby was reading her own poetry out loud to the cat. Gil was outside, trying to attach homemade solar panels to his van before the next storm hits. And me? I was upstairs, sorting through old photo albums. Mom's handwriting covered the margins, little notes, dates, recipes, memories. Then, tucked between 2 pages, I found a folded napkin. It said, in her handwriting, if they ever find out, forgive me first. I just sat there for a while, tracing the ink with my thumb. Forgiveness wasn't supposed to come easy. But maybe it was the only way any of us could stay human. That night, we had what Grandma called a leftover feast of emotional recovery. Everyone was quiet at first, the kind of quiet that comes after too many truths. Then Patty started telling a story about how she once got trapped in a mall Santa costume for 8 hours. By dessert, we were laughing again. Real laughter, tired but genuine. Ruby raised her glass. To surviving Christmas. Harper added, to starting over. Grandma lifted her cup of cocoa. To secrets finally running out. Later, after everyone had drifted off to bed, Grandma and I sat by the fire. You knew all along, I said quietly. Didn't you? She didn't answer right away. She just poked at the fire with the iron rod, sparks flying. I knew pieces, she said finally. Enough to see how it would end if left alone. But I hoped it wouldn't take a snowstorm to make you all face it. You could have just told us. She chuckled softly. And ruin the entertainment? I groaned. Grandma. She smiled, eyes twinkling. You're stronger than you think, Lila. Your mother would have wanted you to have this house. But not because of money or land. Because it's the one place stubborn enough to hold this family together. I swallowed hard. And if we break it again? She leaned back, her voice low. Then you fix it again. That's what families do. Over and over. Until one day, it sticks. Around midnight, I couldn't sleep. So I went outside, crunching through the snow toward the old oak tree by the fence, the one Mom used to hang bird feeders on. Someone had put a new one up. A note hung from it, fluttering in the cold wind. I pulled it off and read it under the porch light. It was from Ryan. Gone for a bit. Need time. But I'll come back when I'm ready. Save me a cinnamon roll. R. I smiled, small, sad, real. Inside, the lights glowed warm against the snow. Inside, the family I'd nearly lost was sleeping under one roof again, broken, complicated, but trying. Maybe that's all Christmas was ever meant to be. When I walked back in, Grandma was still awake, sipping cocoa, wrapped in her robe like a queen who'd conquered chaos. She looked up. Did you find what you were looking for? I nodded. Yeah. Kind of. She smiled knowingly. Then go to bed, dear. Tomorrow we pretend to be normal again. As I climbed the stairs, I looked back at her, the matriarch, the instigator, the keeper of every secret and every bit of love we didn't know how to show. For the first time, I didn't feel angry anymore. Just grateful. Because maybe the truth had wrecked Christmas. But it had also rebuilt us, one messy confession at a time. Exactly 1 year later, I found myself standing in the same driveway, snow crunching under my boots, hands shaking from nerves, not the cold. The house looked exactly the same. Maybe a little more worn, maybe a little more ours. The roof still sagged, the porch still creaked, and the mailbox still leaned at a dramatic angle like it was perpetually gossiping about us. I hadn't been here since last Christmas, the Christmas that blew my life apart and weirdly glued it back together again. And now, Grandma's annual mandatory Christmas reunion was in full swing. Her invitation had arrived last month on fancy stationery that said, "Attendance is not optional. Bring your own emotional growth." When I opened the door, the familiar chaos hit me like a snowball to the face. "Lila!" Ruby screamed, running toward me in a sparkly red jumpsuit. "You're early. Or am I late?" "Time is an illusion." "Both," I said, laughing as she crushed me in a glittery hug. Patty Cakes popped her head out from the kitchen, wearing an apron that said "Too blessed to be stressed, but still stressed." "Coffee? Or therapy first?" "Coffee, definitely." "Double shot or triple?" "Surprise me." She winked. "Triple it is." The living room was full of laughter and the faint sound of Bing Crosby battling Ruby's karaoke machine. Gil was trying to show Grandma how to use a drone for festive surveillance. Grandma was pretending not to understand while secretly steering it with uncanny precision. And there, near the fire, was Harper. My sister. It still felt weird saying that. She smiled when she saw me. "You came." "I did," I said, smiling back. "I figured if Grandma can survive last year, so can I." She laughed. "She's been on her best behavior lately. Only 3 dramatic speeches this week. That's progress." Ryan arrived 15 minutes later, dusted with snow and looking healthier, calmer somehow. When our eyes met, there was no anger. Just the shared memory of surviving something too ridiculous to ever fully explain. "Hey," he said. "Hey." We stood awkwardly for a moment until Grandma marched between us carrying a tray of gingerbread cookies shaped like famous dictators. "Eat," she commanded. "It's tradition now." Dinner that night was surprisingly normal, or at least our version of normal. No wills, no secrets, no storm. Just food, laughter, and the faint background noise of Ruby's improv carols, which included a jazz remix of Silent Night that made everyone deeply uncomfortable. Halfway through dessert, Grandma stood and clinked her glass. "Oh no," I whispered. "Here we go." Now, she said with mock offense. "This is not a confession or a revelation. This is a celebration. You all made it through a year without setting anything on fire or suing each other. I'm proud." Patty sniffled. Ruby clapped dramatically. Gil toasted with hot cocoa. Then Grandma smiled, that sly, knowing smile that always meant she had one last trick up her sleeve. "I also have an announcement," she continued. "Don't panic, it's a good one this time." We collectively froze. She pulled out a shiny key from her pocket and dangled it like bait. "The old cabin behind the orchard? It's been fixed up." Everyone stared. I turned it into a retreat house. For any of you who need to escape family for your own mental health. Ruby gasped. So it's like a timeout hut? Exactly, Grandma said proudly. With snacks, Wi-Fi, and a lock. Patty burst into tears. She's a genius. After dinner, we all ended up outside, wrapped in blankets around the fire pit. The air was crisp, the stars sharp and bright, the kind of night that makes even chaos feel holy. Harper sat beside me, sipping hot chocolate. You ever think about how crazy last year was? All the time, I said. It feels like a fever dream written by someone who hates therapy. She laughed. And yet, here we are. Yeah, I said quietly. Here we are. We fell into a comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. Then, from across the fire, Grandma started humming, the same old Christmas tune she always did. Only this time, instead of sounding haunting, it sounded peaceful. Later, when everyone had gone inside to open presents and fight over board games, I lingered by the snow-covered yard. The bird feeder Mom used to hang was still there, the one I'd found the note on last year. This time, there was another note tied to it. I pulled it off and smiled at Grandma's unmistakable handwriting. Families don't heal in silence. They heal in noise, tears, and burnt turkey. Keep making a mess, it means you're still trying. Inside, laughter erupted again. Someone shouted about cheating at Monopoly. Someone else, Ruby, demanded holiday justice. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own home. Because somehow, through chaos, confession, and catastrophic cooking, we'd become what we were always meant to be, a disaster that worked. As midnight struck, Grandma raised her glass one last time. To love, to madness, and to Christmas, the one day a year when we all admit we're just winging it. We cheered, clinked glasses, and laughed until the walls shook. And in that perfect, ridiculous moment, I realized something. Maybe peace wasn't about quiet or perfection. Maybe it was about learning to laugh while the house burned, and trusting it'd still be standing when the smoke cleared. 3 years later, the house looked smaller. Maybe it was the snow piled high on the roof, or maybe it was just time. Everything feels smaller after you lose the person who made it big. Grandma had passed that spring, quietly, gracefully, in her sleep. Of course, she left behind a letter titled "Open only if you're crying and can't find the remote." It started with, "If you're reading this, I'm dead. Don't make it weird. Put on coffee first." That was Grandma, blunt, hilarious, and impossible to forget. It was Christmas Eve again, and the whole family was back under the same roof. Not because we had to. Because we wanted to. Patty Cakes, now simply Patricia, but only on work days, was setting the table with her twin toddlers clinging to her legs. Ruby had gone semi-professional as a holiday motivational speaker, which basically meant she got paid to dramatize trauma. Gil had turned his van into an eco-podcast studio. He still believed the moon landing was filmed in Idaho, but we loved him anyway. And Harper? She was sitting by the fire, humming softly, her hand resting on her growing belly. Her new partner, a gentle, bearded chef named Milo, was in the kitchen burning something that smelled mostly edible. Ryan hadn't come yet. But he'd texted that he was on his way, with a new girlfriend and, apparently, a therapy degree. So that should be interesting. I stood by the window, watching snowflakes drift lazily through the fading afternoon light. It felt wrong not seeing Grandma's silhouette in her rocking chair, her mug of cocoa in hand, her eyes plotting someone's emotional growth. "Penny for your thoughts?" Harper asked, walking up beside me. "Inflation," I said. "You'll have to give me at least a cookie for that." She laughed, handing me one. Still sarcastic. Good to know some things don't change. Grandma would have hated if I got sentimental, I said, half smiling. She'd say tears are just emotions that forgot how to behave. Harper nodded. She also said forgiveness is just stubborn love. I looked at her, my sister, my once enemy, my best friend now. She was right about everything, wasn't she? She grinned. Except about her gluten-free pie crust. Dinner started just before sunset. It was loud. Messy. Perfect. Every seat was filled, every plate overflowing. Laughter tangled with the clinking of glasses, and for the first time, I didn't brace myself for disaster. Halfway through, Ruby stood up with her wine glass and said, "Since Grandma can't make a speech, I'll do it." Everyone groaned. But then she pulled out a folded piece of paper. Actually, she left one last note. It was taped to her old recipe book. Says, to be read at dinner, preferably after at least 2 drinks. We all leaned in. Ruby cleared her throat dramatically. To my family, the loud, the stubborn, the survivors of my cooking and my meddling. If you're reading this, I'm probably haunting the kitchen. Don't panic, I'm only here to check the seasoning. You've all done what I hoped, you forgave, you fought, and you came back anyway. That's what love is, coming back anyway. So here's your final Christmas mission. Keep the chaos alive. Don't let comfort make you boring. Don't let pride make you strangers. And for heaven's sake, never let Patty cook the turkey unsupervised. P.S. Lila, the cabin's yours now. But make sure it stays unlocked. Someone will always need a place to hide, cry, or breathe. Love, Grandma. By the end, everyone was crying and laughing at the same time. Even Gil. Though he claimed it was allergies from the emotional air. After dinner, we lit candles in Grandma's memory. Outside, the snow fell thick and soft, the kind of snow that muffles everything except laughter. I walked out to the cabin later, key in hand. Inside, it smelled like cedar and faintly of cocoa, Grandma sent. On the table was a single mug, waiting, and a note that read, "Welcome home, kiddo." I sat down, sipping cocoa, staring at the flickering candlelight. And for the first time in years, there was no ache in my chest. Just warmth. Just gratitude. Back at the house, I could hear everyone singing, badly, loudly, perfectly. Harper's laugh rang out above the rest, followed by Ruby's dramatic sobbing about family harmony. I smiled to myself. Grandma had always said families aren't built by blood, but by the brave idiots who refuse to give up on each other. She was right. We were the brave idiots. And this, messy, loud, and wildly imperfect, was love.